Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, I am joined by Jody and Adam, and we have an awesome guest that I'm really excited to talk to. We have Casey Cobb from one of our clients, Project Ricochet, and he has a really amazing story to tell us, and so I'm not going to give him much of an intro because I don't want to steal his thunder here. But before we get to your story, Casey, do you want to give us a little bit of background on your company and kind of how you came to Summit and kind of those first couple of years with us?
Yeah, for sure. So I led and lead a digital agency. And my partner at the time, who I've since bought out of the company, he was looking for, like, his responsibility was kind of the stuff that Summit does for us now. And he's like, man, I just really don't want to be doing this. And so let's look for, we needed a tax person. We had somebody helping us with our books, but we didn't really have any strategy. We had some spreadsheets and stuff. And our tax person, who was like my dad's tax person when we were growing up, right? Like,
hey.
What's that?
I am getting up there in age, but still.
I was gonna say, well, she was just like, for his firm, the firm, they were like, hey, this isn't our core thing. And unless you move a bunch of money with us, because we do that's where we make our money, is the financial stuff. We're not gonna really be available for taxes anymore. And I'm like, well, I got all my money in index funds. Like, I don't need it to be managed.
Right. So
then we were looking for people, and there's all sorts of snake oil and, people out there. And, we finally, I think we learned about you guys at one of the owner camp events,
Yep.
Or maybe we had known about you before, but we started the talk, and, I would never go back. It was an amazing decision. That's how we found you guys, and key part of the team on many fronts since then. So it's been great.
Wow, thanks. So definitely a step up from the tax person, you're saying, huh?
Yeah.
And Casey, I'm heartbroken. Yes, I definitely remember. It was at the Bureau event. Actually, it was San Francisco, because that was the very first one that I had ever attended. So it was kind of like a whole different thing. So we had quite the crew at that San Francisco event whenever we were there.
Why are you heartbroken?
What's that?
You said you're heartbroken?
Yeah, because you don't remember. Yeah, that was like right whenever I was like, that was my first time, and you just were like, yeah, maybe I met you before. I talked to so many CPA firms, though. Like, you're just one of the.
Now you're
now you're just digging in, because I remember, actually, Casey, that conversation, you kind of changed the way that I pitch, because I can't remember, you were going back and forth. I mean, it was like a technology conversation. I remember it was like Drupal versus WordPress, and you and somebody else were just like, and there was a lot of adult beverages, so we were drinking and having a good time. And then you'd kind of started talking to me about what we do and how we do it, and we were talking a lot, and I was giving you my good pitch. I was telling you what we do and how we do it, and justifying, basically what we do. And I was talking a lot about the tactical stuff, like, we can do your bookkeeping, we can do all this other stuff, and then, oh, by the way, we do all this strategy and advisory stuff for free, because I was really leading with the tangible stuff first. And you were the first one to really call me out on it. You were like, Adam, I heard you talk, like, your whole thing sounds amazing, but what strikes me is that you start off with, like, and this is really good feedback. You're like, you really talk to me about all this other, like, accounting stuff that I could really care less about. I would pay that fee that you were talking about just to talk, because it's all about the strategy part of it. And so that made me kind of rethink how I presented, how I talked about our services to clients a lot, was actually great. That moment. So yes, I was a little heartbroken, because it was so meaningful to me.
Don't feel bad, Casey. This happens all the time. People don't remember meetings with Adam, so you're not the only one. So don't feel bad.
They always remember meetings with me, though. Just so you know.
I think it's interesting, because I have discussions with people all the time where I'm always trying to take something from that discussion, and I just pick out these kernels that kind of stick with me. like, actually I was talking with a guy who a friend of mine who I ended up not utilizing the thing that he sells for many years, but something that stuck with me for like years is, he told me once, like, hey, if you're going to do a deal, like just set the conditions that make sense for you. Like and then just stick with that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like, don't kick it out of hand and then not accept it because you're worried about all these things. Just say, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to make $500 an hour or something, like whatever, just whatever, and see if it works. And if it doesn't, whatever. And that stuck with me, like that basic concept. Right. And, 5 years later, I was talking to him. I was like, dude, you said something that like stuck with me for years. He's like, what the hell? I don't even remember having that conversation. He's like, yeah, your dad taught you that. And he's like, yeah, my dad did, but I don't even remember telling you that.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works, because that's funny. That conversation that you just talked about, it's something that Adam and I talk about all the time, is like, this is the services we provide, and like, we want to make sure we find the right fit. The last thing you want to do is try to sell someone into a service they don't belong in. You want to get them in that right service level. So that makes a lot of sense. So let's start going down your story a little bit, Casey. So I know you had a turning point a couple years ago here. So if you want to kind of go into that, and again, what that turning point led to, and kind of some of the thoughts you had coming away from that.
Yeah. Well, so the digital agency space has gotten, to say it's gotten crowded over the past decade is like the understatement of the century. Like we had open source technology that became a thing. All of a sudden, all these people that couldn't afford $1 million projects now could afford $100,000 projects. The people that couldn't afford $100,000 now afford $10,000 projects. So like it just lopped a zero off of the cost, at least. And so there was just a tremendous influx of work, and a ton of agencies crowded into that space. And then like the crunch happened, and COVID was just like the final Mike Tyson punch out on that kind of like end process that happens. But over the past 10 years, my business partner and I were trying to figure out the solution to that. And it became clear that we were kind of trying to figure out we were going down different trajectories. And so you guys helped us broker a deal because we just couldn't come to even a starting point. And we finally, as we do with you guys, I say, hey, here's the problem. Can you turn it into something tangible that we can, some sort of a fulcrum that we can push against to come to an accord? And we did that. And we did a deal. And then it was me and you guys basically running the company. And I had found out like a couple of years before that I had a brain tumor, that the doctor, my Kaiser doctor, was like, don't worry about it though. It's not a big deal. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah.
Seems like a big deal.
He's like, it's in the middle of the brain. It's not cancerous. We can tell because it's this kind of thing. It's the world's rarest brain tumor, but it's not cancerous. So don't worry about it. Every 6 months I would get it scanned, and it would grow like a little bit, but then they're like, the way the MRI takes the measurement, it could be a different size. It could just be the same thing, but it's just different level of it. So it could be the same. And every 6 months it got bigger. And then like the third 6 month scan, it had grown like 40%. And he's like, well, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
it's like, dude, when do you start worrying about this, right?
Just wear a baseball cap.
Kaiser's got this reputation. And so I talked with a specialist. Like actually, I went into a Facebook group for this super rare condition. And everybody in there was like just talking about how they're like Dory the fish memory. Like they have permanent short-term memory loss when they got this thing removed. I did an informal poll, like a Facebook poll, and like over 75% of the people had like severe long-term, short-term memory loss. I was like, holy crap. I'm barely hanging on like with my brains that I have. Like if I'm going to lose half of them, like, holy crap, I can't keep up. Right. And so somebody pulled me aside and they're like, you have to find the best person for this condition. You can't just leave it to some guy who's never done it or has done it a couple times. Like you need to find the expert. So I found the expert and I sent my scan to him and he was like, dude, you need to have this out now, like right away. And I was like, oh crap. So I talked with you guys. and you guys referred me to a guy who basically we didn't have, because we have a bunch of employees in different states, we didn't have a healthcare plan, like a company healthcare plan. We were just basically adding it into the comp for the employees. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to roll out a healthcare plan that could let me be seen by that guy within like 2 weeks. And then so then I had that covered, and then I like prepared my estate, like my estate trust. I did like everything, put a will together, I wrapped everything up because I'm partner in a brewery as well. I don't know that I ever told you that, but I've got another.
Yep, sure did.
Yeah, you probably heard indirectly because I've got a complex case. Dave's like, dude. Yes.
The guy's
every yeah. So I had this big mess to like wrap up and like tidy up because, I could die. Like I could go into this thing and either come out severely disabled or die. So like I prepped all that stuff and, went and had the surgery and, came out fine. Like this guy was a pro. He's like the best surgeon for this condition. He's done hundreds of them. Mm-hmm. And it took me about I got about 1% better every day. So I was having like the way that the reason people have short-term permanent memory issues is that the doctors are so worried about bleeding in the third ventricle, the middle of the brain where this thing is. They get in and they cauterize the whole inside of your brain. Like they just zap it to prevent bleeding. Mm-hmm. But when they zap it, they zap like your personality and memory. Like, so like they just fry the whole system to keep it from sparking.
Yeah, that's why you're cool now, right?
What's that?
That's why you're cool now.
Yeah, exactly. My wife did
with Jody because you forgot that you didn't like Jody.
My wife was a little disappointed. She was like, I thought you were going to come out like, different. Same guy. So anyway, came out and I was having like dealing with the stress of, this is the best part. So right when I came out of it, 2 of my biggest clients were like, hey, we have to pause on everything because of just the way the budgeting's working. So like the clients that we were hanging on to like keep going, our work's dropped from like hundreds of hours a week to like 10 hours a week, like nothing.
Wow.
Dropped down, like the bottom fell out. And I was like, oh crap. So I'm dealing with like just my life collapsing. I'm dealing with like cognitive issues from the surgery because my brain got all scrambled and like just anxiety issues in general from the condition. And then you just add on like gasoline to the fire, and the brewery was having challenges, like everything, the worst it could possibly get. And I was like, all right, so Tom, what do we do, man? my Summit, CFO, and he's like, all right, let me make a plan. And he came up with like a runway based on the cash in the bank that you guys advocate that we should have. Mm-hmm. And he's like, all right, this is what you can do. So I was like trying to figure out how to get more work, but I was just chasing after just commodity, like just stuff that is not survivable. I mean, just survival, subsistence stuff. It's not how you're going to grow your company. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I talked to a mentor of mine and he was like, dude, just shrink down to the size that you need to shrink down to. And then just figure out your way forward. And I read Blue Ocean Strategy. Like I read a bunch of books at that time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, what's the blue ocean? I was like, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. So I basically just told the team, like, find new jobs. I'll pay you to find new jobs right now. I've got money in the bank. I'll just pay you guys. Like, what do you need? They said, well, most people were like, okay, if you could pay me half of my salary, that would be enough for right now. And I was like, okay, you don't even have to do anything. Just go find jobs. And they did. Everybody found jobs. They're all great, great folks. And I went down to just me and my admin. And I signed up for this, like, how on LinkedIn you get these like these LinkedIn spam things?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
All the time.
Dragon ball.
Yeah, in 2018, that was a new thing. And so I signed up for that, like a service to do that, just to like talk with CTOs and CIOs to like try to understand the problem, like what is the new blue ocean, right? And I talked with like probably like 50 people, maybe 100 people, and they're all waiting for the sell. But I was like, I don't have anything to sell. I'm not selling you anything. I'm just trying to understand. So I kind of validated the problem. And the problem that I saw was that everybody is looking to external teams, like technical teams to solve their pain. And then they give the technical team the problem or the pain, and then the technical team tries to come up with a solution for it. And they're really bad at that. Like technical teams, like technical people get lost in the weeds all the time. They get fixated on stuff that doesn't matter. They spend way more time, like it's not their money. So they just like, it's like if you were trying to buy, a dresser for your house, and you found somebody, the only way you could get dressers you thought was like to have somebody build one. And this guy's like building stuff from like ancient redwood, old growth stuff. And he's carving in like all
Taj
sorts
Mahals of dressers.
Yeah. Like he's like, I'm almost done with the ornate decoration of the history of, your people. You're like, what? Dude, I just want to store my socks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
An IKEA dresser would be fine, but you didn't know that was an option, right? And this person's certainly not going to give you an IKEA dresser for $100, right? He wants to spend 4 years creating a masterpiece that's going to like, quote unquote, last. And he may or may not even ever deliver it. It may never work. It may never, the drawers may never open, right? And that's what technical work is right now. Like you go to this tech team and they're like, okay, I'll start. And they just get lost. And there's the two principles that I found that I ended up writing a book about was the Pareto principle and Parkinson's Law, which is like 80-20 rule, right? You get 80% of the way there in 20% of the time. Like how can you instill that concept in your tech team? So like that was like I was like, okay, that's part of the puzzle. It's like if you think about it, 80-20 rules everywhere, right? You get 80% of the accidents are caused by 20% of the drivers, 80% of the taxes are paid by 20% of the taxpayers, like all the 80-20 is everywhere. Mm-hmm. So you could, if somebody had $100,000 project that they needed to get done, if you could help them figure out what the 80% solution was, you could do it for $20,000, right? So it was a huge swing of what that thing could end up costing between the IKEA dresser and like the amazing built for 1,000 years dresser. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And then the other thing, is like Parkinson's Law, like the amount of time something takes is how much time you allot it, right? Like if you've ever slept past your alarm clock, you can get out the door in like 10 minutes, right? Like you just brush your teeth and get coffee on the way. And, like you don't do the stuff that you do normally. You naturally find that Pareto, that 80-20 solution in the morning, right? Because you don't need to sit there for 30 minutes browsing the news. You don't need to make coffee. You don't need to like do all these other things. You don't need to sit in your bed for 15 minutes browsing Reddit before you wake up. Like, these are the things that you can cut out. Yep. So how can you instill those in your software process?
I'm glad you gave a name to it because I've always called Parkinson's theory Jody's theory because that's what he's always telling me.
Yeah?
Every time I talk to him, he's like, there's just people are going to fill their time, and so I've always called that Jody's theory. So I'm glad we know the real name behind it.
Yeah, Parkinson's Law. So what I was trying to figure out is like, okay, I've been doing this with my clients for years. Is like the best analogy, not to get lost in the tech work, is like, let's say you bought a spa on Costco.com for like $2,000 and you wanted to put it in your backyard, and you call the electrician and say, okay, I want to put it right here. And he says, okay, that's going to be $10,000 worth of electrical work to do that. And you're like, but dude, the spa was $2,000. I don't have $10,000 to install this. Like, I guess I can't have a spa, right? That's like most technical work. It's like, I want to do this thing. I'm like, okay, it's going to be $500,000. You're like, oh, wow, I guess I can't do it. What you would prefer that person do is walk around your house and say, okay, but if you put it over here, it's only going to be $1,000 because it's right next to the circuit box, and it's going to be a simple job. And you might look at that spot and say, well, the neighbors can kind of see it, and it's under a tree, so there's going to be some leaves, so I got to clean it out. But you know what, man, it's not $9,000 worth of inconvenience, right? Just put the spa there, and when I get a bonus at work or I win the lottery, I'll put it back where I actually want it, right? It's good enough for right now. That discussion doesn't happen in technical work. Like, people don't come around and say, hey, this could be $5,000 or it could be, $500. Here's how you can get it to be 500. And so like, how could we set that up? And so I developed this whole intake process and like estimating, like building, like how can you plug engineers into this whole machine so that if any one engineer leaves, it's okay, because another engineer can see the whole thing and go, okay, I see what I can do. I see these tasks. I see how much time they're supposed to take. If you think that's going to be three hours, then here's what needs to be true to make sure that that happens. Like the whole feedback loop is like built in this beautiful machine. And like, I went to a bunch of people. I was like, where could I like have this machine, sell this machine rather than the people, right? I don't want to sell the development hour. I want to sell the machine, the orchestration layer.
Yep.
And I went to a bunch of people, like, I talked to like coding boot camps, and I talked to a bunch of different organizations. And one time this guy was like, dude, if your thing is so amazing, why don't you just go sell that thing and just make a bunch of money? Like, why are you trying to get us to use it? And I was like, he's like, why don't you just use it to build stuff and not try to sell the system and then figure it out later? And I was like, you know what? Fine. I'll just sell this thing. So I went to all my clients and just said, hey, I'm not selling you development by the hour anymore. I'm selling you this process. We're going to plug people into it, and then I'm going to deliver it. It's going to be the same to you, except it's going to be way cheaper. I'm just going to mark this up like $25 an hour right now. That's what I do. I just add $25 an hour onto the cost of whoever I find to plug into this process and do the work. So now I'm working with like Fortune 5 companies to do this. I'm working with a number of digital agencies, because the pain for digital agencies is like they have fluctuating work and they may not have the ability to keep these guys busy all the time, right? So then they're just like stuck with this one guy who specializes in this one technology.
Right.
And so what I can do is to like marketing agencies or design agencies or even development agencies, it's like, hey, with your clients, use this process to like really understand the need and come up with an estimate, get that cemented. And dude, I'll spin up a high performing engineering team in like, a week. I can have folks from all over the world plugged in, and I'm just going to tack on a small fee per hour for this management. And then when we're done, we dissolve them, or you keep some people that you want if you still have an ongoing need. And we actually did that for this agency that had this like start date that they didn't know when it was going to start because the client was delaying. And then finally, after like 2 years of like kind of stringing along, they were like, okay, we got to go now. We got to have it done like, in 3 months. We got to have this 1,000-hour project done. I was like, all right, click the machine, got a bunch of people plugged into it. And we were up to like 200 to 300 hours a week of work delivering between front end, back end, a data migration specialist, a QA guy. They had the design all covered. But we spun up this team. We had one guy who kind of like flunked out really quick, and we could see it because our machine's like, hey, red alert. And then we were able to counsel him and coach him. And when it was clear that it wasn't going to work, plugged another guy in, just barely a blip. We hit the deadline. And then at the end of that, everybody went, down for the people. Like one of the guys stayed on my team, and I've had him on other projects since, but like they scale up and scale down, and they don't have to worry about creating this perfect bespoke team every single time. And to them, it's amazing because they can still make their standard rate. They pay less than they otherwise would have, even in some cases. And then they like all that stress, the same thing that you guys helped me with when I was coming out of this thing. Like, I just know that when I have a problem, I go to my CFO and say, hey, help me solve this. They come to my firm and I help them solve those technical challenges. And then they don't have to carry that team after the fact. It's like engineering as a service. So that was the new blue ocean that I found. And all the core things that I was doing to solve my clients' needs before, I just sell as an actual system now. And I've been scaling that up. I wrote the book. Got it right here, actually.
Nice.
Script, right? Yeah.
There we go.
And in fact, Parkinsons Law, I gave my designer this. What's that?
That's it right there. How do you get that book, by the way? Is it on, where's it at? Apple?
You mean the printing?
Yeah. How can I get that book?
Oh, how can you get the book? No,
yeah.
I don't have it on, I can just send it to you.
Okay.
I just send it out. Like, I didn't put it on Amazon because, the thing is how do I say this? The title of the book is Flipping the Script, because I think that it's really unfortunate how engineers have become like the king of the castle for technical work. And like they fall victim to all these cognitive biases, right? Like over-engineering, overbuilding, combative, like blaming you when they delivered something that wasn't right. And like people are really frustrated with this. So my whole thing is like, let's build the plan and plug the engineers into the plan rather than going to them and saying, please save me, oh, king.
Right.
And so I know that if I put this book on Amazon, like the people that I'm dethroning are going to like just flame it. So I'll just send the book out and I'll control the review process of it. But I'll say, I'm happy to send you a book. I'd love to.
So we can, we'll get your email address out there, but you want to just plug it right now so we can have people email you, but we'll also have it in the show notes.
Yeah. Just Casey@projectricochet.com. And Ricochet is spelled different than most people spell it, right? It's Ricochet. It'll be on the show notes, but everybody always puts Richochet. Like it's just a common.
But they just can't spell. I mean, what can we say?
Dude, but everybody can't spell. That's the problem. Like everybody in the world.
It's a hard word.
If I were to go back and pick a new company name, I probably wouldn't pick that because I have to every time I have to say, okay, I'm not saying that you would misspell this, but I think you probably would misspell this. So let me spell it.
Dog company. It's a little easier to spell.
So question on your clientele. What's the client size that they typically would actually benefit from this? It sounds like really any size of business.
Dude, that's the thing is like this process doesn't care whether the project is, a $500 project or a $5 million project. Like I've literally done this for super tiny stuff. I have clients that are just tiny little clients who use the help for this. And I have 2 of the Fortune 5 companies like using this right now. And I have prominent universities and like, they just know that they come with a problem. We chop it up. Say, here's what the size of it's going to be. Do you have anybody who can plug into this on your end? Oh, you do? Okay, let's take these 2 guys. And then we're going to need, based on the math, we're going to need 3 more people. We're going to find those folks. Do you have to have them in, like some people can only do domestic engineers. Some people don't really care. We can go to Eastern Europe or Latin America or wherever. And we can resource those folks for less less money per hour. And then we build the team. There's also a thing that I built a video I had a video made that I can send you that I call it my space station model, where you have like an integrator, domestic or within your company. And then we spin up these engineers the way we chop up the work. They may not even know who they're doing it for, but they have these specific tasks that they deliver to the integrator on your end. And then that person kind of integrates it and puts it out to all the sensitive systems with confidential information. So it allows you to scale up really quickly with that single choke point. And then if that person leaves within your organization, one of those external people can become that integrator for a short period, and then they can go back to being external at some point. Kind of like, how countries dock with the ISS, right? Like they can just kind of like send stuff over and they don't have to like be in it really. They just kind of connect and then they go.
That's pretty cool.
So it can be super large, super small. That's why, I think about it like orchestration layer. Like there are services like Google Kubernetes or, these things that like the cloud computing, you don't know the servers. You just know that you push some code and it's just available, right? And then it can scale up and down. And then when you're done, you can just turn it off and then it goes away. So Google doesn't care whether it's a tiny little thing or a huge thing,
Yeah. So if you're an agency though, and you have a team, but you maybe don't have a complete team, if you kind of plug into this plan, this system, are you able then to just augment that? So I have, 3 of the different disciplines that I need. And is that still a solution, or does it have to be like the whole team?
Absolutely. That's the whole idea, right? So the whole idea is that, you like to use that example with the agency that I worked with. They had comps, right? They had designs, and they're like, okay, we chopped it up into an estimate, like I call it the 5 things analysis. So it's like a 5 by 5. What are the 5 high level things? And then what are the 5 things within each of those 5 things? Oftentimes it's more than 5 and 5. Sometimes it's 7 and 8 or whatever. But roughly we try to break it up into that. And then that turns into an estimate using an agile planning poker. And then that turns into hours and dollars across the board. So it's like, okay, we have 500 hours of development work and like 500 hours of, project management and QA and, release management and like kind of X factor, who knows what could come up, like all that stuff. So it's like 1,000 hours. And you have 2 engineers who can give 20 hours a week. So we have 40 hours, and you need to get this thing done within 2 months. Like if you divide 40 into 1,000, there's no way. It would take way longer, right? So we're trying to solve for, in order to hit this deadline, we need to get, an extra 150 hours a week. I'm not doing the math in my head, but another 150 hours a week, which is going to be, if we get guys working 30 hours a week, right? Like, this is how many engineers we need to find. And so they're going to work alongside. Like, what are your folks going to do? What are our folks going to do? And how are we going to work together to be able to scale this up? And then we just plug those things in. It does require that the other team to be following the same methodology, because if we're tracking budget and like alerting them if stuff's going to go over, like we have to be all on the same page. Mm-hmm. But it's minimal. It's very easy to do that. And so, yeah, we can work alongside. And that's the whole thing, is a lot of these people that are saying like, oh, we want to do staff log, or like, give us everything and then we'll just deliver it. It's the same problem. You don't know if these people are going to actually deliver it. You don't know their practices or whatever. But what I do is say, okay, here's the zip line. Like, here's the system. We're going to run your folks down the zip line. You're going to run my folks down the zip line. And then when we're done, your folks stay, my folks disband. And then we're ready. If you, like in a future project, maybe your people can handle it. You don't need external work. But then at some point, you need to be able to snap your fingers and scale up 300 hours a week. That's really hard, man, because engineers are a fickle bunch, and it's hard to find. In busy times, it's hard to find good people. And in tough times like now, it's hard to find good people because you just get so many applications. You don't know, like, you can't ever sift through it. And with technical people, you don't know whether they're a good fit until like you get into the weeds with them. And then you're like, oh crap.
We know that.
To have a bench. I mean, we promote that all the time, but to have a bench with a system on top of it that they can kind of plug in just kind of adds that extra layer to it that, a lot of times people are missing. So.
Yeah, the thing that keeps me up at night is like, if I have a rock star, if that person quits, man, as an agency leader, I'm screwed, because I have the relationship, I have the project, I have my reputation. And if you're an owner of a company, you know that you cannot trust from a week to week basis your intuition on how people are feeling. Like, everybody's been in that situation where you get this like, hey, can we talk?
Yeah,
you're like, oh, sure. And they're like, hey,
can we talk next year?
Exactly. Right? Like, no, we can't talk. In fact, I'm unavailable until the end of this project, right? And then you get that thing, like, I got another job, I'm giving my 2 weeks, or maybe not. Maybe it's just like, I'm out. And you're like, no, man, you just told me you were great. You just told me everything was fine. And like, it's like, that's the thing. That's just, you just have to deal with that. And that anxiety used to eat at me, man. And now, like, it's like, all right, I wish you success. And I snap my fingers, and then we've got more engineers that plug into it. Right. And then I don't have that anxiety anymore. Just like with you guys, like, when I get anxious and I like email Dave, like, dude, can we talk? Cause I want to talk about taxes for like an hour. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And, I just know that I have that. I don't have to deal with that anxiety anymore, because you guys have it. You guys have it covered. Right. So.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Everything you said there is, basically what an accounting firm like what we're doing, we have the same issues, right? We have, the technical people are our accountants. Our accountants are, you tell them to do something, they'll go from A to Z, and they won't think outside the box. And we can't have that in our world. Our world's got to think outside the box. They got to be more consultative than they do just simply going from A to Z. And it's amazing how similar the two really are.
Yeah, I think exactly. Everything you talked about really does apply to, as you're talking through a lot of things, I'm like, how can it help me in my job with running this accounting team? So I was trying to think through a lot of what you were saying. And I think that, this podcast is really helpful. I think you went down two very important paths. You talked a lot about, how to run a successful project and what it takes and the things you need to look at, but also, earlier, I think talking about, kind of your change in vision and the things you did when you had that change in vision, and kind of the conversations you had with your CFO and how important that was. So I think we've unpacked a ton in this podcast. We're pushing time right here. So any final thoughts from anybody on the podcast?
Yeah, I do want to share one final thought that I thought was great from you guys. Sure. So I did, when I was going through my brain surgery recovery and stuff, and I was like, okay, I got to go down to just me. I got to build it back up. And like, I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of talking, and I came back from my vision quest. And I was like, all right, this is the path forward. This is what I have to do. And I told my Summit CFO, so I told Tom, I was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And he was like, dude, that's pretty dramatic, man. Like, are you sure? He's like, are you sure? You're like, are you okay? Like, are you, you just got your brain drilled into, like, are you good? Like, should I really be listening to you right now, essentially? And I was like, yeah, man, like, here's the logic. Like, you try to argue with me. And he's like, all right, just want to give that little pushback and checkpoint to make sure we're good. And I thought that was so great because you need that. Like, as a boss of a company, you never get people who say, like, hey, dude, everything, are you mentally there, right? Like, it's always like, all right, let's do it. Or I disagree with you, go to hell, I quit, right? Like, you get these two extremes. And then when I said, no, this is the future, this is how we're going to build this thing back up. He's like, all right, here's how we're going to do it, man. And we made a plan, and we've been executing on that ever since then. I mean, it's been over 2 years now, and we're still marching toward this path. And every week, Tom's like, all right, here's how we're progressing toward the plan we came with, so many years ago. And by the way, I don't ever want to lose Tom if he can't ever
Wait, is that what you're just talking about?
We don't either.
He just asked for if I had time this afternoon. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, dude, he can't ever quit. Like, whenever there's like a new guy on the call, I'm like, hey, you're not leaving me, are you? Can't leave me.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Any final thoughts from Jody or Adam?
Dude, it's been great working with you. I mean, I do remember the San Francisco as well. I mean, Adam wasn't the only one there. And I remember you talking about the disc profile like it was something, and we'd never heard of it at the time. And you're going through and talking about how you're this and your wife is this, and you're breaking everything down. And it was pretty cool. And that's what I got out of it big time, because we went back and we started implementing that type of service right away with our team, just to get that same feeling that you had with yours. So, we tend to learn as much about our clients as our clients learn from us, which is really cool in the relationship. And we look at it more as a partner relationship, not a vendor, relationship type of thing. And I think that's what you're trying to do as well. You're trying to be a partner with the companies you're working with, and not a vendor, which is huge.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's great,
Awesome.
man.
Throw it to you, Adam. Final thought here.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Jody said. I mean, I really appreciate the feedback and learning from one another. And yeah, I do remember the disc profiles. You and Eric were going back and forth, and me and Jody were like, what the hell are these guys talking about? I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was, and
it wasn't disc, it was something similar.
No, it was disc. It was disc. Because it was a good time, and definitely enjoy hanging out, and hope we get an opportunity post-COVID to be able to attend an event together and have a few drinks.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for joining the show. This is a great one, and thanks for joining us, Casey.
Thanks, Ray. Talk to you later. See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.